I'm Kara Ray, founder of the Powerful and Uncensored Entrepreneurs. I'm a mother, stepmother to 3 beautiful children. I'm a wife and a proud entrepreneur. I'm a mindset coach specifically for the powerful and ambitious online female entrepreneurs who desire to create wealth and abundance in all areas of their life. The Powerful and Uncensored Mompreneur podcast is for the ambitious women and mothers who are ready to rise together and empower one another. Get plugged in each week for unfiltered and uncensored conversations between myself and industry leaders who are here to support you. They have unwavering points of views and empower women to believe in themselves. We will be discussing business, spirituality, sexuality, energy, strong points of views, manifestation, and what I like to call breaking the stigma topics, conversations that will no longer be silenced. This is a safe place to reclaim your power of being a woman. Let's dive in. Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Powerful and Uncensored Mompreneur podcast. Today I have the pleasure, my goodness, I did this on the last episode where I couldn't speak and now I can't speak this time. So guys, I have the pleasure of interviewing Carrie Hines. Is that how you say your last name?
Hins, but yeah, that's
Hins?
fine. Whatever. I'm easy.
It's Carrie Hines, guys. And so Carrie is a wellness coach and she's actually from the UK. She specializes in burnout and stress. So she's been through her own personal struggles as well, but Carrie is dedicated to helping millennial women overcome their ill effects of being overwhelmed, stressed, and out of living life on autopilot. So welcome to the podcast. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
Sorry that I couldn't use my words at the beginning here. Oh my goodness.
It's fine. It's real life. It's real.
It is. And I don't edit those things out. That's the fun part of it, is that everybody listens and they can laugh. I mean,
good. I'm glad you don't. I'm glad because nobody should have perfect edited podcasts because that's not how life is.
No, nobody's perfect.
No.
So I'm super excited to have you here. Today we're going to be talking about overwhelm and burnout. We're going to be talking about self-love and taking care of yourself, and just as women in business and entrepreneurs. And so I think this conversation will be very powerful for a lot of women. But
I hope so.
Before we dive into the questions that I have for you in the podcast, I always ask one question to the women on the podcast about what are you currently celebrating in your life right now?
Oh, I love that. So I am celebrating, I guess I'm celebrating today a bit of an up-leveling. I have been feeling a little bit of resistance lately, and I'm sure a lot of women can relate to this within their business. And so I've been feeling a bit of resistance to the next step of my business. So like the next phase, the next level, and something hasn't been sitting quite right. So today I've just taken some time for me. I've done lots and lots of journaling, some manifesting, and taken some time to really sit with myself to try and figure out where this resistance is coming from. So I feel like having taken that time and kind of celebrated the resistance, I suppose, I feel so much better and so much lighter, and yeah, amazing already.
Well, resistance, I think everything in life should be celebrated no matter what we go through and what we feel. Resistance is there for a reason. So I was actually just talking to a lady the other day where she didn't understand why she was feeling so much resistance. And then she realized that one spot that she was feeling all of this resistance was the one thing that was still this solid grounding board and this consistent in her life. That she felt resistance in changing that because it was the one thing that was comfortable. So it's just interesting to talk about, resistance and change in life. And it's, well, we're constantly changing.
Yeah,
it's constant. So so I love that you brought that up. Good job on celebrating that. That's important. I think, like I said before, I think everything should be celebrated. I honestly think if you had a good night's sleep, I think you should get up and do a dance party and you should celebrate it.
Completely agree. Absolutely agree. Cooked a good meal, celebrate it. Yeah.
So I know that we've chatted before. So this is the first time that I get to see you. I know that nobody else gets to see us. Sorry, guys. But I just want to talk to you, you had mentioned before that you have gone through yourself some personal struggles in regards to like
Mm.
burnout and overwhelm and stress. And I'm just curious as to what brought you into the coaching industry and wanting to specifically coach women who struggle with this, and what the
Mm.
struggle you had gone through, if you're open to sharing that.
Yeah, sure. So about a year ago, I basically started in decline into burnout, I would say. I'd been traveling for a few months, and I had kind of traveled across Asia and lived in Bali for a little bit, and then came home, and just my health just basically went into a downward spiral, and spent all of last year basically restoring my health and getting myself healed and back to a good place. And within all of that was burnout and overwhelm. And I didn't realize how much the physical body and the mind are completely connected, like they're totally intertwined. And my physical health was impacting my mindset and vice versa. And my physiological stress from my adrenal glands and from inflammation was impacting my mind, and again vice versa. So there was just a lot of work to be done, and I found myself feeling completely overwhelmed by all of this, and just not knowing where the hell I was going to go or what I was going to do about it. And the worst thing was not knowing how I'd got there in the first place. And for me, that stemmed from kind of having an overachieving personality, being a perfectionist, always being busy, always working really hard, always trying my best. And that's great. All of those things aren't negatives, they're not bad things. But when we overstretch and overwhelm and overdo things, that's when we can get burnt out and deflated, I guess, and life can run away with you. And that's when you kind of the default autopilot switch goes on, because you're not sure, where the hell you're going and what you're doing, and you can stay living like that for forever. And it's about taking that responsibility to then say, I can't live like this anymore. And that's kind of when I guess the coaching stuff sort of popped into my head, and I just thought, I have to do this for other women. I have to be there and be that support for them, to try and help them promote change and spark that change and that transformation, to avoid going through what I went through, basically.
That's beautiful, because I think it's important to be able to talk about how everybody in their life at some point has probably experienced stress,
Yeah,
anxiety, overwhelm, and
absolutely.
then
Yeah.
that leads to burnout. I
Mm-hmm.
like to describe that overwhelm is the first sign, like those blinkers or those sirens are going off, and they're like, "Meh,
Mm-hmm.
meh, meh, it's time to stop," and then you don't,
Yeah.
and you keep pushing, and then you reach
Yeah.
burnout. And
Absolutely.
I really want to touch on that like now, because it took you some time. You were saying before that you didn't necessarily know how you got to that
Mm.
point.
Mm.
Is there any tips or anything that now you've become extremely aware of, that all of a sudden you notice the signs of overwhelm,
Mm.
or you notice those signs? Like, what do you notice in your life now that you've become more aware that that's
Yeah.
not something you want in your life anymore?
Mm. I think the biggest thing for me was, part of not knowing how I'd got there was I wasn't listening to my body, and I wasn't listening to myself. I was totally separate from myself, I guess. And I just couldn't figure out what I'd done wrong. Because in my head, I thought, this is the big thing, I thought I was doing all the right things. So I was going to yoga regularly, I was eating well, I was vegetarian at the time, and I was had a healthy, in inverted commas, diet, and everyone thought I was healthy, and so did I. And I kind of thought I was doing all these right things. So I just couldn't figure out what it was. So I think for me, the main thing to avoid burnout and overwhelm is to get really good at listening to the signals and to your body and to your mind. And the way we tune in to what's going on inside is through slowing down and taking it easy and maybe backing off life a little bit, which I know can sound impossible for some people, but I promise you it is possible. And meditating, journaling, doing self-discovery into what it is that you actually need as opposed to what you think you need. And I think there's a separation there between what you truly, wholly need to nourish you and what you think is right. Because you can be doing all the right things that you think is right, but if you're not tuning in, then you'll never know whether it's actually working for you or not, and whether it feels good or not.
Yeah, and I think it's important that we become aware that we live in a society that has taught us that if we don't work every single day for what we ultimately desire, that we won't achieve that. And that is not true. It is not true, because I don't do that. I don't work every minute of every day of my life and allow my business to engulf everything, because my business is not just who I am. I am passionate beyond anything about my business, but I also have a family. I have children. I have a husband. I have parents who I value spending time with, and friends who I'd love to see. So before, I can relate to the overwhelm and the constant push, push, push and hustle mode that we refer it to, or the type A personality who is the go-getter and can't stop and doesn't want to stop, and it's uncomfortable. But if someone is thinking that it's uncomfortable to stop, or they think that they can't, you need to get so uncomfortably comfortable with stopping and taking a step back. It is so extremely important, because you need to take a step back. You need to take a break. That's where creativity really comes to play. How are you supposed to create and really be in tune with yourself if you're constantly working? You're in a hustle mode. You're not in a creative mode. So it cuts the two off. It's kind of like when we dive deeper into your feminine and your masculine energy, your masculine is your hustle, go, 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 or your feminine is your creative and your relaxive energy. So you need to tap into both. Both are needed. But for myself, I want to touch on, anxiety, because I know that anxiety and anxiousness is a major trigger that I know something's off.
Yeah.
Even the other day, because I had been sick for a while, and it had made me feel very depleted, and I'm not a person who likes to not be able to be there. Like, even though I take time for me, I'm very much of a person who loves to be able to help and provide. And so I wasn't able to do that, and my husband had to take over. And so finally I felt better, but I wasn't 100% okay yet. And I pushed myself way too hard, and I ended up having an anxiety attack, which was because I overwhelmed myself. And so even as a coach, even when I come on here, I'm still human and I still struggle with things in my life, but I've learned them. That was a huge moment for me where I said, okay, I know that this is not something I should have done, and I did it anyways. Now, how could I change this for the next time? It's just that awareness, like you were saying before, about being aware of the habits that we may have, or what we think is true, and almost flipping the script and rewriting that to create the life that we ultimately want, for a stress-free, no overwhelm, no burnout, because that is not a life that I want to live. I don't want to go. I know I was actually having another discussion with a woman yesterday about how she pushed herself so hard, and she pushed through overwhelm, and then she ended up burning out and ended up disliking what she truly felt passionate about. And it's so important, if you are a woman in business, that it's okay to take care of you, and it's okay to step back. It's actually needed. It should be actually something that you block out almost in your calendar. Like, I'm not doing anything today. As a coach, I'm just able to serve clients and be in such better creative mode by being able to take care of me. But it took time. Like, I think people need to be aware of that too, is that you may not necessarily understand the overwhelm or the burnout or why you've gotten yourself there, but it's being aware and just knowing that if you're feeling that, if you're feeling anxious and you're feeling tired and you're feeling resentful, maybe you need to sit down and, like you were saying, journal about what is troubling you, and then evaluate, prioritize, and go from there. But I just went on a little bit of a rant there.
Mm. No, it's so true though. It's so true what you say. And I have absolutely been through that. And although I was in kind of a good place in my healing before I started coaching, even within my coaching business, I can't I call it like fun burnout because I put so much into my business. I felt so passionate and so creative and I was like, yes, this is amazing, go, 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 go. And then ended up feeling burnt out again. And I was like, how is that possible? I'm doing something that I love and something that I'm passionate about. How is it possible I'm feeling burnt out again? And it was because I wasn't taking any time for me.
Yeah.
And I was in like a very, I guess, like powerful mindset then. But actually, sometimes you need to balance that with the yin energy and slow down and take care. And, it's all about balance in this stuff. It's, you have to balance the yin and the yang and the masculine and the feminine. And yeah, it's so important.
And I think people need to be aware that what may work for you or I might not work for them,
Yes. Yeah.
because we're all so different and our bodies work differently. They're not all the
Mm.
same. They're not created
Mm-hmm.
the same. Like, yes, we have the same sort of organs and everything, but at the same time, our bodies are genetically different.
Yeah.
So nobody can be the exact same as somebody else. No, but nothing is going to work exactly the same for somebody else. So I
Mm.
think that's important when people are looking through those things. I just ran a free course in my community all about spirituality and creating it and
Mm.
as your own. And there was questions that were coming up about from people saying like, how to start. I don't know how. I'm overwhelmed by it. I just don't know what to do.
Mm.
We overwhelm ourselves.
Yeah.
So we choose overwhelm. It's
Yeah.
not something that just creeped up and was like, "Hey, I'm your friend
Yeah.
now." We chose to to be overwhelmed, and we chose to
Yeah.
push ourselves to that point, or we chose to overcomplicate. I think that's a big thing that we do a lot of the time, is that we overcomplicate relaxation.
Yes.
Um, I feel like there's so much judgment for people who decide they want to sit on, like, say they want to sit on their couch and watch a show that they love. I've
Mm.
seen so many people be judged for that because of the negative effects of like the blue light or anything that's going on, or how it takes away from their imaginative state. But they're like, what if that is what lights me up and it makes me feel relaxed and then I show
Yeah.
up? And if it
Yeah.
does, all the power to you, and do what works for you.
Yeah.
I just wanted to touch on that. I'm not sure where I was going fully with
Well,
that, but
no,
I had
it's
to talk
it's
about
true
it.
because that's like what I was saying about doing. You have to find what feels good for you. You have to find what's right for you. There's no point forcing yourself to do something that you don't want to do just because you think it's right or just because it works for somebody else. Because
Mhm.
ultimately, that's probably going to make your burnout worse because you're going to be stressing yourself out trying to
Yeah.
do something that you think is going to work and then it doesn't work and then you feel worse and you're like, oh my god, I don't even know, like, yeah. So you have to, and it's about experimenting. You have to try lots of different things and just find what works, and actually listen to the response when you do it. So
Yeah.
not everything resonates, and that's fine.
Yes. Not everything does. That's why I
Mm.
always say take some, leave the rest. There's always going to be something
Yes.
that somebody will be able to listen to and take from
Yeah.
this, but there's also going to be information that not everybody is going to want to hear. They're going to be like,
Yeah.
I don't need this today.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people, even I was there's been so many conversations, so I'm glad we're having this discussion today about burnout and overwhelm. But I
Mm.
also want to just touch on the fact that burnout and overwhelm can also have to do something with comparison. So people a lot of the time are they get stuck in the coaching industry in this comparison trap that they have to do what somebody else is doing. So
Yeah.
they may see them posting 5 times a day or going live or doing this and doing that, and then they feel like they're not doing enough. Well, in really reality, your chapter 1 should never be somebody's chapter 20. Like, you can't do that. And so I know, even myself, because that's how I originally started getting overwhelmed in my business, was because I felt I was never doing enough,
Yeah.
because I was comparing myself to every other person on in the coaching industry, thinking that I should be at their level when I
Mm.
just began. And so I think people need to start giving themselves a break, and that you're
Mm.
human, and that you're allowed your chapter might take like 20 hours, or it might take 2 years, where somebody else's chapter could take them 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And that's life.
Yeah.
So I think it's important to talk about how women in business can sometimes feel like the overwhelm because they're comparing themselves to others on the online space.
Yeah, completely agree. And the online
Um,
space is huge, so
oh,
it is overwhelming in itself, even without looking at other people. The whole thing's overwhelming.
it is. There's days
Yeah.
I honestly, this was something that helped me. So I don't know if there's like, I'm sure there's online business women that are listening to this podcast, but what I ended up having to do because I started overwhelming myself thinking that I had to do all the things and follow all the things and be all the things,
Mhm.
I decided to put my blinders on. There's
Yes.
nothing wrong with doing that, where I literally was like, okay, I'm going to go on Facebook or Instagram or whatever social platform that I was on. I was going to post and then I was going to remove myself from social media. I wasn't
Yeah.
going to look and comment and like or do anything. And I was just going to step away. And that
Mm.
made a huge difference in how I
Mm.
perceived my business. And I forget that there's some days that I look and I wish I was in maybe a different spot or I was at a different space in my business, but I work
Mm.
towards that every day. But there's also other people looking at, say, you or me or somebody else thinking that they wish that they were there or they
Yeah.
were proud and they're looking at you. So I think it's important that we just, that's why I believe in women empowering women and really
Mhm.
coming together and talking with one another and supporting
Yeah.
one another, because a lot of the time we can relate so much to one another.
Yeah.
So much.
Yeah. I mean, we're all going through the same struggles, and that's the thing is that when we compare ourselves, we're almost putting like some distance between us and them, and that's not what it's about. It's about creating connections between women and empowering each other. And I think it's it's so easy to fall into the trap of imposter syndrome, and you know trying to think you should be ahead or should be this, should be that, when actually just focus on where you are right now in that moment, because you're so right. It's it's an evolution. Business is an evolution, and it can't be rushed with this kind of industry, this service-based industry, and with coaching and things. Any kind of business, it involves an element of preservation for yourself to be able to give to others. And yeah, we all need to be there for each other.
Yes. And honestly, I just want to touch on the fact that I'm extremely blessed that I decided to become an entrepreneur, because
Mm,
it has allowed me to become extremely aware of myself, my
yeah,
boundaries.
yeah.
I I did I knew what a boundary and value was before, but I didn't care about them before. I
Mm,
knew that I had some, but I really allowed myself to be like this different person when I was working a 9 to 5 that I disliked with every ounce of my being. Or I worked with individuals that I did not get along with, and they were toxic relationships, or even the
mm,
friendships that I had in my life that I thought I was supposed to have, or drinking and doing things that I should never do, where that was my life before. And now
mm,
I look at my life and I have a husband, I have beautiful children, I have a family, I have an online business, and I'm connecting with women like yourself who are
mm,
extremely empowering and wonderful. Like, these are the connections that I get to make.
mm.
And I've had more support from the women behind my camera than I
Yeah.
have for the women that I thought were my best friends. Like, I think this is so important, because I value my business and the women that I connect with so much. And it has taught
Mm,
me to prioritize myself, because they remind me to every day. They cheer
yeah.
me on every single day in doing what I love to do. And I'm hoping that you have the same experience with women in the online space.
Yeah.
But it's really helped with my stress and my overwhelm. It's allowed me to be accountable, because
Mm,
it's allowed me to also realize that emotions are meant to be felt. And if I suppress them and push them away, they're going to resurface.
yeah.
There's so much that I've learned being in the online space and surrounding myself with other women who choose to live the life they ultimately desire, and they
Mm,
work towards that. They don't just imagine it, they actually take action towards that, which I believe when you take action towards what you ultimately want and you become so clear with that, there's a lot of things that resurface themselves and
mm.
you have to deal with them and go
Yeah.
through them. And
Absolutely.
it's like your body detoxifies itself from everything you'd suppressed
Yeah.
for the years and years and years. it's an experience in itself.
Yeah, I feel like I've literally been through that the last few days. And especially today, some stuff came up. I had a call with my own coach this morning, and some stuff came up, and I was like, "Holy hell! Where has that even come from?" And I had no plan of bringing this stuff up, and then I just felt like super vulnerable all day. So I've just totally honored that, and luckily for me, I've recently made a new connection over, well, we actually spoke yesterday for the first time. And I turned to her and I said, I'm going through this right now. And I wasn't like, just having that element of vulnerability to turn to someone who you've never met in person, but just having that online connection just to be like, oh God, I've just had a call with my coach and this is how I feel. And she's like, oh, okay, tell me what's coming up for you. And just having that support that you would probably never get anywhere else is just absolutely phenomenal. And I would say that is probably one of my biggest tips of advice is you cannot isolate yourself in this online community, because you're not going to get clients that way and you're not going to make connections that way and have the support. And I find it's so important. And I had some resistance to that to begin with, and I put a lot of people that I saw and that I followed on pedestals and kind of looked up to these people and then felt a little bit intimidated. So my advice for that was I reached out to a few people and said, hey, this is kind of how I'm feeling about what you're posting right now, and I just wanted to share that with you. And they were like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry that you feel that way, but I'm so grateful that you shared it. And then connections are built from that. So I reached out to one person in particular and said, I really admire you, I love your content and I love your message, but I actually feel a little bit intimidated by you. And I think she was a bit like, oh my gosh, why is she sharing this? But amazing, I'm so glad that you did. So I think having that element of vulnerability online and reaching out to people that you might feel a little bit intimidated by builds connections, it sparks conversations and builds a community around you. And I think that is so important. And as women, I think that is where we thrive.
I believe wholeheartedly in everything you just said. And I believe in vulnerability.
Yeah.
Vulnerability is such an important piece of being just simply a human.
Yeah.
Because if you're not willing to be vulnerable and open up and share certain parts of who you are, how do you expect anybody to actually know you? How do you expect anybody to truly get to know you or grow with you or support what you ultimately desire or want out of life if you aren't being honest about it and vulnerable about it? Because I feel the biggest breakthroughs come through vulnerability.
Yeah.
Biggest impact can also come through vulnerability. A lot of my clients, if I wasn't willing to share, personal experiences that I have struggled with in my life, and I wasn't willing to become very open about that, I would not have impacted those women in a certain way, and I might not have had that connection with them right away. So I think vulnerability is so important, and to have a connection with women where you can say, you intimidate me a little bit. That's okay. I admire that, and I admire the quality of being able to be honest about that, because there was a lady that I connected with a few months ago, and I loved her personality so much. She was on fire. She was hilarious. And to me, because she had such confidence, like it reminded me of like Beyonce walking into a room, like flipping her hair. And that's the energy that she gave off. And so to me, at that stage where I was in my life, it was intimidating. And I remember saying the same thing, like, I'm a little intimidated by you, but not in a bad way, because I believe that I'm intimidated by you because you give off such incredible energy, and I want to get to that point. And there's a different way of perceiving intimidation. I used to be called intimidating all the time by men, by women, by family. It didn't matter who it was. And when I started asking, because it started to really tick me off that people were calling me intimidating, I'm like, why? Why do you think I'm intimidating? I'm a nice person. Like, I'm a nice person. And I remember I talked to my mother-in-law, because my mother-in-law was actually one of them who said, yeah, you're intimidating. And I was like, what? Why? I said, you think I'm intimidating? Oh my goodness, I don't want you to think that. And she said, no, I believe you're intimidating because you're so strong-willed.
Yeah.
you are very powerful in the words that you say. Like, you don't hide if something upsets you. You're honest and to the point. And she said, you don't sugarcoat things. You tell people how it is, and you have boundaries and values, and you know where you want to go, and not a lot of people do. And to other people, that can feel intimidating.
Mm.
So I think it's good to bring up that we all have probably intimidated someone unintentionally in our
Yeah.
life, but
Yeah.
it has probably, that intimidation in the most positive way has probably propelled them to push
Yeah.
themselves towards something that they wanted in their life, whether
Yeah.
that's confidence, a business, a family, whatever it looked like, or utilizing
Mm.
their voice. Because I believe as women, we've been taught for so long that we should suppress our voices and that our voices should not be heard, and they're
Mm.
not powerful enough to make a difference. Well, I believe we've proven that that is wrong, and that we have powerful voices and we should utilize them.
Yeah.
And that means that not everybody is always going to enjoy what you have to say when you really
Mm.
step into who you are. I've really found that in the last like couple months that there's been a lot of love and encouragement and just this loyalty there, but then there's also been a lot of, I can't even believe you just said that.
Yeah.
And I won't apologize if I've said
No.
something that I truly feel is on my heart that needs to be talked about. I
Yeah.
will never apologize for that. Obviously, I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings, but this is my life. And so there's going to be
Yeah.
things and decisions I make that people might not agree with.
Mm.
Such is life.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so true. And that comes from really like owning your space and owning your power and stepping up and believing in your authentic self.
Yep.
And that then comes from doing a lot of work. Like you know, it's not easy to step up and be like, this is my space, this is what I do, and to speak with confidence. That's not an easy thing.
No.
And that then can be easy to feel intimidated by other people. But I do feel like there's a difference between being intimidated and being envious. I feel like
Yes.
intimidation kind of sparks, like you said, like kind of like, oh yeah, I feel a little bit intimidated, but also a little bit motivated at the same time.
Yeah.
Whereas envy is like, ugh, look what she's doing. And that's totally different. That's totally different.
Yes.
That's totally different energy to being like, oh god, what is she doing? To, oh wow, I really like what she's doing, but it's kind of making me feel weird things. And
Yes.
like that's so there's a big difference. And I feel like that comes from, you know, stepping up and showing up and owning who you are as a person and
Yeah.
claiming your space in this world.
I love that you brought up the difference between, like, there could be the difference in intimidation of, you're giving me all these feelings and I don't know
Yeah.
how to feel about them,
What is that?
compared to the envy, because that is
Yeah.
something that I know that even years ago in my life, I've struggled with envy and lots of
Yeah.
different emotions.
Yeah.
We're human. I believe
Mm.
we all struggle with all emotions in life. Or jealousy. There's a lot of like envy and jealousy, I believe, really, they're like two playmates. I
Yeah,
believe jealousy and envy
they
are just
are. Yeah. Yeah.
these little friends. And I remember I said there was an experience when I was talking to my coach where not I felt jealous. I wouldn't say necessarily all envious because I wasn't angry. I just wanted to be in a specific place already, and I was just like, why is she there but I'm not there? But I
Mm.
love her and I'm so excited that she's there, but like I want that. And my coach was like, take a moment to think about what you just said and really, really, really evaluate that, because of course we all have this major vision and we all want to end up where we ultimately desire. But are you embodying that version of yourself? Like,
Yeah.
are you
Yeah.
taking care of yourself? Are you actually doing what that let's say 10K earner or whatever is embodying?
Mm.
And I was like, no, I'm not.
Mhm.
And I had to become extremely accountable. And the how doesn't make sense on how business, or figuring out your mind, body, and soul and how it all works together, because there's a lot of information and a lot of tools that are available out there. I believe everybody just has to figure out what works for them, but
Yeah.
really learning to prioritize and knowing your boundaries and values is huge in regards to knowing the warning signs of burnout and overwhelm. I
Mm.
think it's important,
Mhm.
because if you don't have boundaries, like if you don't know how to say the word no and you are
Mm-hmm.
constantly saying yes and being a yes woman, well, eventually, yes, you will become extremely burnt out because you're always saying yes to things that don't serve you.
Yeah.
So I think if you become aware of a boundary, so say you say no, I have to learn to say the word no, and it's going to be
Mm.
uncomfortable, but I'm going to do it, and then you're going to move through it, and then you're going to have so much space for all the things you actually wanted to do. And then
Yeah.
you're going to realize that the overwhelm isn't there, and it could have been literally missing behind a word no. You
Yeah.
could have just simply said no to something, and you could have removed the overwhelm from that space at that moment. So I think it's
Yeah.
just becoming accountable and knowing that we get to choose every single day
Mm-hmm.
where we ultimately want to be.
Yes. Absolutely. We are responsible for our own life, for our own happiness, and we are in control of our destiny ultimately. And that is a
Yep.
very scary sentence to say to somebody, that they are in control of their destiny and their dreams. But you are, like, are your outputs actually getting you to the place that you want to be? Are your actions leading you towards your dream? And I guess this kind of comes into manifesting a little bit of, there's a difference between kind of knowing what you want and saying, yeah, I know what I want, but actually, are you doing the things that make the universe believe you actually want it, and taking the actions and the steps forward to get yourself there? Like, it's not, you're not just going to say, I want £1 million or $1 million, and it's not just going to arrive. You have to make make the leaps and take the steps to make it happen. You can't just sit there and wait. It's Yeah.
That's a big one. Is there's a lot of individuals who will sit and journal and really become so clear about what they ultimately want,
Yeah.
and then they think that's enough.
Mm.
But I'm here to tell you it's not. And
Yeah.
it's not. You're being positive and having a great outlook on life is so extremely important. Please don't get
Yeah.
me wrong when I say this, because that's a huge component. But to take action, if I just sat in the background and all of a sudden was like, I desire to have a thriving online business, and then did
Mm.
nothing to do that,
Yeah.
it doesn't create it on its
No.
own. I
No.
had to take action. I hired out things that didn't necessarily make sense. I took courses when I didn't necessarily have the money in my bank account that made sense to fit that in that time. And the
Mm.
how doesn't have to make sense to embody this next level version of you, because
Mm.
ultimately it doesn't at first. And then you keep moving and you keep taking steps, and then all of a sudden you're in this space and you wonder how you got there, but you worked yourself towards
Yeah.
that every single day because you took action, no matter
Yeah.
what, no matter through the fear, because like you were saying, the universe, you're in constant alignment with what you're attracting in your life. So if you're
Mm.
wondering why you're not attracting something, well, you're in alignment with something else. That means you need to up level. That means you need to take action, and you need to become clear on what that looks like for you and what that action takes. Then you can become in sync with because the universe ultimately wants you to have it. It
Yeah.
doesn't put it on your heart to be like, na 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 boo boo, you can't have that. No, it wants you to have it. It's like, hey, you like it, you love it, now let's get you there, but you
Yeah.
have to meet me halfway. I
Yeah.
can't give it all to you. You have to work towards that and prove to me that you want this. And so I think it's important to be accountable and to talk about that. Like, universal laws are so important to talk about
Mm.
because there's so much interconnectedness with the universe itself, but
Yeah.
as just as being a woman or being a man or being a
Mm.
woman in business, there's interconnectedness in so many spaces of our life that we forget about, or we forget about how we all have a vibration. I'm talking to you right now,
Yeah.
my voice carries a vibration. My body's giving off a vibration. My computer, inanimate objects give off vibrations. It's
Yeah.
important that we're aware of that.
Yeah.
So I could talk for days about universal
Yeah.
laws because
Yeah.
I
Oh yeah.
firmly believe in them.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like we have gone way off wherever we were before
That's
that,
okay.
but that's okay. I mean, we can talk about that for days.
Yes, and honestly, that's why I love the podcast, because we can have a discussion about anything. And I believe it still all fits in together in regards to stress and overwhelm. And if you're not aware that everything is connected and that really you ultimately have a choice on
Yeah.
who you desire to be,
Yeah.
you have a choice of remaining in overwhelm or stress or burnout.
Mhm.
You get to move through that, or you get to stay there. So I think this all fits together in what we're talking about
Yeah.
as being a woman in business and,
Yeah.
vulnerability and openness, because
Mhm.
it's all connected, and it's all connected in regards to, if you decide not to be open and then you get stressed out, then that can lead to overwhelm. If you
Mhm.
decide to utilize your voice and you connect with all these incredible women and you use that, you could avoid that. So I think everything we've discussed today really pulls it all in together nicely. There might be a lot of information we've talked about, but I think it's all powerful for the women who are listening, because they can pull information from either spot.
Yeah, and like you said earlier, take some and leave the rest. And I think I think you're right. I think it's all relevant, and it's all kind of underpinned by, for me, burnout stems from a disconnection from something within you and a misalignment. So whether that is kind of, missing some sort of vulnerability, or forcing something that shouldn't be happening, or not taking action, that's kind of the middle steps that bridge the gap between you being really overwhelmed and something not connected.
Yeah.
So something's disjointed, and yeah.
I think the biggest message for people to know is that they need to be accountable for themselves.
Yes,
Is that
absolutely.
if you feel stressed or anxious or overwhelmed or tired or burnt out, that you ultimately need to be accountable for that feeling and
Yeah.
for the fact that you got yourself there.
Yes.
Because nobody else did.
No.
You did, by the choices you made. And so, but we also get the choice to come out of that. And so I
Yeah.
think it's extremely empowering to women to know that you might feel that and you might be there, but that is temporary and that is not
Mm.
always, and that doesn't have to be your constant. And
Yeah.
so if there was one other thing that you could tell women on this podcast before, we go, what would that be?
Oh, we've covered so we've covered so much already. Oh, okay. One thing I really loved what you said there about feeling empowered, and I think getting that message across is difficult, because when you say to someone you are in control of your life, that is like, oh my goodness, what do I even do with that? Overwhelming.
Yeah.
Or it's like, yes, I am in control of my life and it's the most empowering thing ever. And we have the choice between the two. We can choose whether we are overwhelmed by the options and the endless opportunities that we have to create and design our own life, or we can say, actually, yes, I can create and design my own life, and that's the best opportunity I'll ever be given. So taking that responsibility for doing the work and showing up as you are is the most valuable gift you can ever give yourself.
That's beautiful. Oh man, you're giving me all the feels now.
Ah, I got all the feels.
So I want to say thank you so much for being a part
Oh,
of,
thank you.
a part of the podcast. I am so glad to be able to connect with you again, and I
Mm,
can't wait to continue to connect with you. But
yeah.
before we go, can you tell everybody where to find you on through like social media?
Yeah, sure. So I am Kerry_Hins, which is HINNS, on Instagram, and then I am Kerry Hins Wellness Coaching on Facebook as well. And I love hearing from women. I love connecting with women and just having deep and meaningful conversations. And yeah, just I love it. I love this thing. I love it.
Yeah, I will make sure to also, so to everybody listening, it'll also be in the show notes. So if you're listening and you want to connect with her, there'll be attachments that you can go and it'll direct you straight to like her Facebook page. It'll also direct you to her Instagram. And so make sure you take a look there if you want to connect further with Carrie. And so thank you again so much for being on the podcast. And I will see everybody else in the next episode. Bye, guys.